Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Randy Bach. Today is August 18, 2021. It's charming and wonderful to be here with you this evening for me. I don't know what time you're watching it. Um, I have a slight warning. If you watched my episode on August 16th, 2 days ago, on the Delta variant, this is going to be covering a lot of the same ground. So apologies in advance. If you come in the middle, that's just going to be your thing. I'm going with the big hair look today. Um, I was swimming a little bit and out in the sun, and there you have it. Um, so, uh, the weather is really nice here. We're going to have some rain. It's been dry, dry, dry. Anyway, enough chit chat. There's always stuff to cover. I guess, fortunately for me, if with the intention of having a weekly coronavirus conversation. And again, it's only a conversation if you contribute. You're welcome to leave comments. I will look at them and try to respond and factor them into future episodes. We are doing this weekly, Wednesdays Eastern Time at 7 p.m. I'm just me. I don't have a producer here, so I'm doing the best I can. And I'm hoping tonight to give you a sense and sensibility about the Delta variant. It's kind of a catchy name. It's the India strain also. You know, names get altered, somewhat to protect the innocent, I guess, or the way that kind of people want to either direct or misdirect your attention, attention and intentions, their intentions, your attention. To produce the right tension for the situation. So for some reason, this Delta, I guess we skipped over Gamma. There was an Alpha and a Beta, and basically these are the same things as the original coronavirus. If we had PCR testing to the same extent and big, huge rollouts, and kind of the I'm going to come back to this term a little bit. What's called safetyism. I used to call it harm reduction. This concept that everyone's going to be kind of bubble wrapped and kept safe for the duration. We would be monitoring the cold like this. We'd be monitoring the flu as flu season comes around. Which phase we in? And who knows? As we get next year's influenza and so forth, the people who like to have authority and verge to being authoritarian, and like perhaps the totality of authority and verge to being totalitarian. Our leaders, they have a special magic, super duper wonderful formula that will make people do extraordinary things. They'll make them kind of jump through hoops as necessary. And you see it a lot currently. So we're going to get to the scene. I actually prepared some slides. Usually I graze over the internet, but a lot of these are culled from the internet. And I kind of want to go over. A lot of people have questions and concerns, and I think a lot of misconceptions about what Delta is. That actually comes from the top even. I am going to be quoting extensively a lecture by Dr. Robert W. Malone, MD, who is one of the inventors of the mRNA vaccine and highly respected, and I respect him highly. And I have, had the opportunity to be in a kind of a Zoom conference seminar with him at one point, and he was talking, I was listening. So we're not on any kind of equal footing on that, but I find his views elucidating, interesting, and I recommend you pursue and search out his videos. They're being scattered away from your potential viewing on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. He's being attacked. How do you know you're being successful? When people are attacking you, I guess. I think there's a Winston Churchill quote on that. There's a Winston Churchill quote on almost anything or everything pithy and interesting. And I guess you're kind of near, near the vulnerable points when you're being attacked. When the arrows start coming at you, it's because you are in danger, or you're perceived as a danger to those, shooting them. So it's an interesting question why our authorities are shooting arrows at people who are saying their opinions. If you want to debate the opinion, debate the opinion. Don't kill the messenger, as the expression goes. And anyway, so let's get to that. I'm going to speak on some of these issues broadly and specifically, but we're going to I guess go to the case of the missing case, and that'll may become clear. And I'm going to work off this slide set. Um, and I hope to do it better than I did on Monday. So, and again, this is partial replacement of Monday's lecture talk. I was actually asked by one friend why I didn't do just a 2-minute video on the Delta variant, and I think I could. And maybe I'll try that at a certain point. I think it'd probably be helpful to do cartoons or something like that. And if you know anybody who does graphics or cartoons or whatever wants to help me consolidate some of these points, I think probably this is about 4 or 5 different shorter videos. But here we go. Um, so this is the case of the missing case. Um, so that's me, Randall S. Bach, discussion of the Delta variant. With appreciation to Dr. Robert W. Malone and pandata.org. I recommend you go look at pandata.org, aka Panda. It's a very interesting and eclectic bunch of smart people who are, I think, in the true essence of science, skeptics. Science really just is the word for knowledge, and knowledge changes over time. Science, before Galileo perhaps posited that the world was flat. Galileo was right; they were wrong. Um, and excuse me, Galileo, I guess, was bringing up that the Earth was not the center of the universe. So I take that back. But the theories are out there, and theories have almost always been wrong. Comets were thought to be world-ending events. They're not. We've had long histories of unseemly behavior. The Aztecs did sacrifices of virgin girls in order to get better harvests or better luck and so forth. That is not really a quid pro quo. It's not necessary, and people figure that over time, and they figure it out better over time. Um, so let's go to these slides. As far as the graphic here, this is just I guess a kid's book. Looks like I think it might be written by Anna Lopez, but I could be wrong. The point here is the case of the missing case. Well, it's actually the opposite. This is the case of the overburdened cases. Historically, a case in medicine or epidemiology, I mean, it can be anything you want it to be. I mean, epidemiologists just have a case, and so that's their own definitional point. You could say, what constitutes a family? Well, it's me and my kid, or it's me and my grandparents, and so forth, or it's all of us with the same last name in this whole city. It can be a clan. Anyway, so how you define things is how you define things. But historically, speaking as a medical doctor, a physician, and I've have long 3 decades in primary care, a case of something is when you're actually worried about it and treating it. So a case of the flu is you're sick with the flu. A case of syphilis, ditto. Case of pneumonia, case of tuberculosis. Actually TB has some interesting aspects because you can have so-called latent or quiet TB, but as far as the CDC is concerned, a case of TB is one that you're treating. We don't generally treat the quiet cases; we treat the active cases. Along the line, COVID has been deemed cases merely by a positive test. Now, early on, not so much because we didn't have any tests with which to do any testing. And so cases were initially defined as those people who are ill. And the case fatality rate, that is the proportion of cases that lead to death, has gone down enormously because we are doing more and more testing. We're finding more and more so-called cases. So what is the Delta strain, and what are cases? Well, so here are daily new cases in India, and this is all after the development of PCR testing kits and so forth to diagnose Delta variant or COVID-19 or the Wuhan flu or whatever you want to call it, coronavirus. They didn't have the 2020 episode, likely because they're a little bit warmer. They have windows open, hadn't reached there geographically by traffic. I can't tell you why. But this is a country of 1.4 billion people, and their numbers are actually not as high proportionally as anywhere in Europe. Again, this might have to do with the fact that the windows are open, warm area, not rebreathing air the way we have, seasonal colds and flu and so forth. So this is the India strain. This is the Delta variant. Why is it the Delta variant? Because India got it a little bit later than other countries, and there's kind of Darwinian epidemiologic and pressure on any organism to adapt to the surrounding. So um, if treatments are developed or vaccines and so forth, the ones that are best battled will disappear. Viruses are always mutating, and so they're working on the margins of slight variations of their own capabilities. In a sense, they're not doing it thoughtfully, they're not doing it by intent, but they're doing it because they multiply so many times that there are going to be some little oddities along the way. It's basically the theory of natural selection that Darwin came up for, coinciding with evolution and whatnot. So these strains came along in India, and the cases, I don't know if I lined these up right, but the case basically precede the deaths. And the deaths here look the same size, but frankly, this is very much lower. There's only 4,000 per day at the peak, maybe 5,000, and the peak is maybe 400,000 cases. So even at the peak, you're talking about a case fatality rate of maybe 1% or so. But overall, for the whole country, it's much lower than that. And there are probably a lot of cases that don't show up as having been tested. So there are a lot of occult or mysterious or not seen cases. Anyway, so what did India do with the Delta strain? Here it is. They had it. They got rid of it. So let's go over this again. They had it. Boom, boom, boom. They went down the roll, up the roller coaster, down the roller coaster. They don't have it anymore. This was big in the news in May. The India strain. The Delta strain is the India strain. The Delta variant is the India strain. So I'm going to repeat that maybe no more times, but you should get the point. India did this without any vaccine. They got rid of it without vaccine. Just humanity doing its human thing, building up natural immunity, and the thing is gone and not seen again. They are immune to it. Done. Um, so this is kind of a a thing that interests me. Snapchat is a lot of fun. Kids play it, sometimes adults. We had it on our phone recently, and everyone's kind of altering faces and whatnot. A lot of laughs. So what's the purpose of this slide? Well, um, probably all of these are the same guy, um, but um, he is slightly altered his appearance. Now this is um, I don't know what is going on. I take that back. I apologize. So things have gone a little haywire here. Um, so he is in exactly the same. He's the same person. If you have a vaccine, it's equivalent to noticing one feature about that person. And I'm not sure what it is. In this case, that could be an external thing like the shirt, could be the beard, the eyes, whatever. There's something about this person that you'll recognize based on having been given that information. So the vaccine is a lot like getting one feature. You get just getting the spike protein. There are many proteins on a given virus, and you're going to watch out for that spike protein. So if you see these eyes, you'll be able to recognize the guy. So there wouldn't be any problem, even though the face is altered, to recognize this set of eyes, this set of eyes. It'll be a little bit trickier for the guy in the middle, and there are going to be some other variants. If it turns out it was the lips, you might be able to recognize one strain, one variant of all the same guy, basically, and go from there. If this guy, were a friend or foe, either way, you'd be able to recognize him to a certain extent. You'd be able to recognize him much better if you had full recognition. If basically you had the equivalent to natural immunity, if you lived with this guy, for instance, or he was your roommate or something like that, and you had known him for even a week, a month, and so forth, you would be able to tell him from others much more easily, even if he had, some changes in his external appearance, because you would know his mannerisms, his speech, the way he walks, and so forth. And that is full immunity. This is the thing that's been taken away by having vaccines, which are preventing people from getting the full experience of the full virus. Now, I don't want that to happen to elderly who are at risk and so forth, but if you're 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years old, up to 50 years old, probably with good health, your risk of getting problems from the illness is minimal, and you're going to get a much fuller version of immunity, natural, immunity. So what are people going crazy with right now? They're going crazy with this. This is this is a New York Post headline. Here are some people. They're not really crazy. They are just very cautious. They're into safetyism, harm reduction. They're outdoors. They're probably a couple. based on body language. They're looking healthy. They're drinking kale, smoothie or something like that. This is really overkill for outdoors. 0 masks is the right number of masks. This is the vaccinated. At left is the vaccinated population of the United States, 161 million. You would have to stare really close in this upper corner here to see the number equivalent to the so-called breakthrough COVID cases hospitalized. And of that number, very, very tiny number were passed away, died. So of this number, 161 million, only about 1 in 150,000 passed away. So the case fatality rate is minuscule. It is 0.0007%. So that's 1 in 150,000 people dying. Now, we don't even know the ages and so forth, because amongst the vaccinated, it skews older and sicker. So this is not your regular cohort of young people. This is the oldest, including the oldest and sickest members of our population, and they total are having a 150,000 case fatality rate. Why are people going nuts over this? I can't tell you. The same thing happened in the UK, but a little bit later. India's cases, as we saw, were, I think, in May. There's a lot of flux between India and the United Kingdom. There are a lot of Indian expats living in the UK, and so there's a lot of commerce and travel back and forth. So they got, they actually had one of the original strains. I think they had a Kent strain, which is an alpha strain, show up over here. And over here is their version, their Delta strain. So we started hearing about it in the UK. But since the UK had a higher proportional rate of illness and number of cases, the United Kingdom only has 66 million people. So this is, the cases reached at about 60K, is about 1 out of 1,000 people at any given moment had cases. In India, it was much, much lower than that proportionally. So they had a longer experience because they had these other phases back in 2020. So they had really good general immunity to COVID, in general. And the Delta one, getting back to that Snapchat guy, is just a variant of that. And so they were able to recognize, their immune systems were able to recognize it, and they have very few fatalities, even though the number of cases are as high as they were back in January. So here's January, here's the deaths, about 1,500 a day. And now it's down effectively to 0. Now, I like to remind people that people do die anyway. And in a place like the size of the UK, you're expecting about 1,000 people to die per day regardless, maybe 1,500 or so. This is the case fatality rate of COVID in general that has been, because of the way early on there were very few cases, we didn't have any testing, so the cases were just the people who are sick. So overall, proportionally, we weren't running out and getting testing. These were the sicker people, and we identified them in the old-fashioned way, like a case of the flu, a case of TB. These were actively ill people. Well, a good fraction of those, 12 to 13%, depending on the country, or 6% or whatever, they back in March of 2020, they had a high case fatality rate. These are the sickest people showing up at hospital. But then we get a lot of testing, the numbers go down. Frankly, I think they should be much lower than what they're showing here, but so be it. So the case fatality rate has gone down vastly. And if we were to include the Delta data just alone, because I think this is comprehensive, this goes back to all this other, including this other data here. But if we were looking at momentary case fatality rate, you would see from above that it is minuscule. This is 20, 30,000 people. This is maybe a handful, 50, so forth deaths. So this is, likely 1 in 1,000 or less. And this would be a number much, much lower, but they're including all the old cases back here, which were actual cases in my view. This is from a study. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a little bit complicated. A French study from earlier this year. And this is before and after lockdown in France. And I probably will confuse everybody, but these little dots here, if they're a circle, they're before lockdown, and a triangle after lockdown. You're 20. So let's just look at the pink ones here. This is by age group. This is your own personal perceived risk to catch COVID. I'm not going to go over what the scale is. So people before the lockdown thought they were this much at risk. After the lockdown, after months of lockdown, they thought their own risk of catching it was higher. This is silly. The actual risk didn't change. So their actual prevalence per thousand at these age groups did not change. So going back to this one, this is a similar, this is like a nomogram, I guess. This is people here before and after lockdown, and their own personal risk. You see that this is where they were around the numbers here, and the numbers went up, even though they thought the outward prevalence of COVID had gone down after the lockdown. So this is what they think society's risk is. This is what they think other people's risk before and after the same. Other people's risk didn't change in their own minds. Society's risk in their own mind, they thought the lockdown helped, but for themselves, they thought each one of them were more at risk. So this is a complicated slide, again, with the other one in tandem, but I recommend you go check it out if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that doing more stuff makes you more worried. Partially it's called the nocebo effect. It's kind of the inverse of the placebo effect. The placebo is you take a sugar pill or you don't know what it is. You think, somebody says, take this, it'll make you feel better. You feel better. Well, the converse, the nocebo effect is people keep telling you, oh my God, if you go through that doorway, bad things are going to happen. If you climb under a ladder, if you see a black cat, you're going to have a horrible thing. So you see the black cat, you go and climb under the ladder, and then you're expecting something bad to happen. And if you hear it enough, you wind up with that expectation. So that's a little bit the nocebo effect. I'm going to come back to this slide, both of these in a minute. But this is from these slides, and most all of them are from the CDC, a lot of the data slides. So I'm not making this stuff up. Maybe they are, but I'm not. This is to talk about the Delta strain. This is why if you watch the news or you listen to your friends, they're all worried about the Delta strain. It is, they're saying it is more transmissible. So this is ancestral. This is earlier SARS, COVID-19. And now it's moved over from as transmissible as the common cold. And now it's as transmissible, say, as chickenpox. We may not know what that is because none of us really get chickenpox very often. But the severity, this is the fatality rate here. The severity has not overall changed. Frankly, I think this is wrong because I think the fatality rate has gone down because half the people in the U.S., for instance, are vaccinated, and the other half are young. So I think we'll find out, and I'll show you in a later slide, that our fatality rate is much lower. But as far as transmissibility, they're saying it's more transmissible. I don't think this is actually the case either. I'm going to go first with Dr. Malone's tweets. And I have this picture over here I took on a golf course, and I'm going to, see if I can have you figure out what this means. So this tiny thing over here, this beautiful view, this tiny thing is a weather station. This is how we measure global warming and so forth. So it's got a wind sensor, it's got a temperature sensor, probably a barometric, humidity, all this kind of stuff. It's all there. If you notice carefully, there's a vine running up it, and the vine's covering part of this. Over here is a huge heat sink. This is where they store the gravel and the sand for the golf course, and it's on a blacktop. So there's a big kind of parking lot blacktop here. So the sun beats down, and this gets very hot. So this thing is getting, I guess, some cooling effect from the vine and some shade. So it's not measuring temperature accurately because of that. And it's probably not measuring it accurately because of this. So there are confounding variables that change the way we observe things. So when we're observing this, we have to think on whom and how it is being observed. And this is the problem that I'm going to get to. I'll tell you about this in just a second. But Dr. Malone is thinking very logically, and he's good at that. And I respect him completely. But he's talking about Delta having an R0 of about 8, which means it's 3 times that of the Alpha variant. And he says with these leaky vaccines, even with 100% vaccine uptake and perfect mask use, we can't stop the spread of Delta. So that's a point he's making. He goes on about this, and I'm going to leave this to you to maybe pause and read and catch up. But I think what he's missing here is a little bit like this scene with the climate measurement. Uh, the, the 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 measuring device is different because, well, in a sense, in this case, we're just measuring a different population. I had the foresight to buy my wife a wonderful anniversary present. It was a kind of a sunset boat cruise on Boston Harbor. We literally missed the boat by a minute or two. Long story, but we wound up clubbing in a way. I mean, we're too old for that, but we wound up at places where young people were because we're in the Seaport District, and that's who was out, not the old people, the young people. And so we were kind of a hotel bar with a patio overlooking the city. We wound up at a kind of, we would call them a disco, but I'm sure there's another word for it, a kind of nightclub with DJ dancing. This is literally the density at which people were hanging out, cavorting, partying, and so forth. This is just a stock photo I got from the internet. I don't know any of these people, but it was, I swear to you, it was not any different. People were this close, up and personal, because they're young and they have been indoors locked up for a year and a half, or whatever it is. They have their own personal needs, which they've made a calculation, surmounts their risk from COVID. They've seen it, they get it, they understand it, they read, they have money. They're making a decision. They're voting with their, feet, arms, hugging, so forth. They are deciding that their imperative to meet and greet and mate and date and so forth outweighs a lot of the stuff, frankly, a lot of the BS that they've heard that includes them in the same breath as 85-year-olds in nursing homes. I like to point out, and I did it many times earlier, that your rate of fatality in the nursing homes is probably 10,000 greater than say a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, and probably 1,000 times greater than these young people here. So keep that in mind. So what's happening with a lot of this supposedly more transmissible SARS, in my view, is that it's in a different population which are doing different things. They're not doing this anymore. They're not doing that. So people who are isolated, this is a very sad thing. These are nursing home pictures. I think I just got them, randomly from websites. I don't know these people, but she looks pretty sad. This is in itself, I mean, she doesn't look sad that instant, but this is a sad occurrence, to hug your potentially not very long for this world relative through, dry cleaning plastic. I mean, this is an absurdity. And this is, I'm going to get to this slide in just a second, but this bunch is not as susceptible in the same way as those other people. They made, maybe more reasoned decisions. If you are this woman and you decide, you made the equation that you don't want to be out and about, you don't want to kind of live life to the fullest. Even an 85-year-old nursing home resident was only at about a 12%, 13% risk of fatality from COVID. And then, I mean, frankly, if you're a nursing home resident, your risk of dying in general is about 50% per year. Only, the average life expectancy in a nursing home is about 14 months. So, you can stay holed up and not do anything, not go out and so forth, and fine. Maybe you'll live those full 14 months, maybe 20, so forth. But, the odds are clearly high, but their odds are high in general at that age of fatality, mortality. So, this is getting, again, a CDC slide about Delta. Just to kind of stay on Delta. There are some, little pinpoint pieces of data that says that, this is the way they phrase it, Delta variant may cause more severe disease than Alpha or ancestral strains. Well, this does not appear to be the case. This is just from the other day. Every day I check the weather. I don't ask for it, but COVID-19 data shows up. Yesterday, again, it was like 2,400 cases, 0 fatalities. Today is about 1,500 cases, 8 or 9 fatalities. These are very, very low numbers. And as we've seen from the earlier slide here, 1 in 150,000 people vaccinated are dying. The number's about the same for everybody under 25 with or without vaccine. So, what's the deal? I don't know. I can't tell you. You know, Dr. Malone on the right side here talks about the fact that the vaccinated are getting breakthrough cases. Well, again, this is getting back to my first point. Cases are being mischaracterized as cases when they're not cases. They're just a positive test of a very, very, very sensitive test in people who are asymptomatic, and this is a meaningless affair. Um, I have this couple in the rain gear because this is my thought about the vaccine. It's a lot like a raincoat out in a storm. They're very, very happy. They're having a great time. They're mostly dry. They're mostly not wet. But once they get in the house, they're going to find they're wetter than they would be absent the rain, absent going out, and so forth. They are drier than if they had had no raincoats. This is the way you should think about vaccines. Okay, they are not perfect envelopments that will keep people from, you know, being exposed to or absorbing or taking in the Delta variant or any other variant at all of COVID or anything else for that matter. What it will do is give you a little bit better preparation, so you have an earlier recognition of the intruder. Getting back to that Snapchat guy, you have a kind of a concept of what he's going to be like and look like, and you're going to be able to head him off at the pass a little bit earlier. And again, your fatality rates are much, much lower than otherwise. There was something in, I think, the Financial Times that showed that it's kind of a teardrop graph that at each individual given age, if you're 85, you're going to go down to um, 20 years lower. You're going to go down to 65 years old. Um, and if you're 65 years old, you're going to go down to 45. And in a lot of cases, this can be a tenfold, and as you get younger, hundredfold, even thousandfold reduction in your fatality odds. So the vaccine's an awesome, awesome thing to get when you are worried about the actual illness and the fatality and the problems of getting COVID. If you're not, if you're in the one of those kids in the it's made the calculation, all your friends have either had COVID or they nobody's getting sick. That is a different calculation. In which case, we're going to kind of get to that a little bit later. That the vaccine is a kind of slightly more dangerous affair than the virus itself. Um, so getting to the point here, um, in the United States, it's a little bit like the UK picture. We have some cases, we have very few fatalities. This looks like we've had multiple waves. We really haven't had so many waves as we had kind of geographic dispersions, different areas of our country. We have a bigger country, and especially as travel has decreased, they can be a little bit more isolated and so forth. But we're getting cases, just like I showed you in Massachusetts. We're getting cases with very few deaths, and just like the New York Post heading, we are not really getting much in the way of fatality or hospitalization. Hospitalizations, I think, are like 1 in 40,000 for people who are vaccinated. There's some data here in England. I'm not going to really spend, it's too hard to read this slide. And maybe I'm going to pass over that one as well. This kind of gets to the demographic point. This is earlier on, 2020, before vaccine. This is California. This shows you what the kind of the population looks like by age group. These aren't all the same size age groups. These are, for the most part, well, these are 10 years apart. So they're actually all different. These are 74 is 4 years. This is 4 years, so forth, 5 years, whatever. Actually, I take that because it's 10. So this is a 15-year bunch, 10 years, 10 years. So these are different cohorts or sizes or slices. But the fact of the matter is that the median age of the population is about in your, kind of high 30s, 37 or so. So about half the population is below that age and half the population is above that age. Well, as far as the fatalities, so if the median age is over here, you'll see that there are very, very few fatalities happening in the lower age groups. This is unvaccinated. And vaccinated, well, it's probably not going to change for the young people. It'll probably go down for the old people. It's gone down. The 80-year-olds, if they lose 20 years, they're going to get a lower case fatality rate. um, um, get lower numbers. This is kind of confusing because there are very much fewer older people. Um, this is, I just put this up to show this is not just a United States thing. That the corona, this is different countries on Earth: South Korea, Spain, Italy, and for what it's worth, China. And the principal cases are in the elderly. There's over 70. All these cases here. Very few. Young people are pretty much not getting any fatalities. So under age 30, the numbers are close to zero. This is kind of a complicated thing. This is getting specifically to Delta. These are showing the variants as they came around country by country, and they all have different. Well, each each one of these is a variant. So there's alpha, beta. I don't know where gamma went to. Here's delta and supposedly a kappa coming next. Um, the delta variant is this one here. It's coming later in phase than alpha. And why? Because people are immune to alpha, and this delta happens to be the one that's out and about standing around. So it's just getting the people who haven't had alpha perhaps, and that just happens to be the one that's there. It's a little bit, the example I use is if that Snapchat guy, if he say he's a criminal and he did a lot of crimes wearing a FedEx costume, but everyone kind of figures out he's the guy, he's the FedEx guy, and so he changed to become a pizza delivery guy. He will have changed his costume a little bit, but his characteristics are almost the same. Anyway, he happens to be the pizza guy now, so he's the one out and about. When people figure out the pizza guy, then he's going to be dressing up as I don't know, moving guy, and then that'll be some other variant, kappa and whatnot. So you can see India here was the line here. They had it first, but a lot of other countries have had it since then. I find this one interesting as well. This is speaking specifically to uh, COVID variants. And this is from a site called covariant.com .org. The green is the Delta variant, and this is the percentage of COVID cases that belong to that strain. So this is probably a little bit high level. You might want to skip over this, but pretty much the countries that are having cases measured are having a fair amount of green. But the fact of the matter is, like most all these places are having zero deaths. Sweden's having zero effective deaths from this. So they have Delta. 100% of their cases, such as they are Delta, but nobody's having sickness. So this is what I call a distinction without a difference. It's not making any difference. This happens to be Delta here in the United States, no deaths. Delta in the UK, no deaths. Ditto, wherever it's rearing its head, it's just an irrelevancy. So people, that's not to keep people from going nuts over it. The current caseload in Israel is green, it's Delta. In India, it's Delta, the India strain, but they're down to zero in deaths. Israel is very close to zero. They had, I think, 78 fatalities the other day, and it placed 10 million people, such as Israel is. They should have fatalities every day, around 250, 300 deaths per day anyway. They're now saying that 78 out of 79 occurred in the unvaccinated. This is a totally separate and new point. They're doing something that's really strange, and I kind of find kind of creepy and sort of borderline governmentally criminal or malpractical. All of the people, every single one of them has been doubly vaccinated, but now they're saying that people over 60 should be triply vaccinated. So they immediately put all these 60-year-olds with 2 vaccines who had their vaccine passports, they're putting them in the category of being unvaccinated, just to kind of like fan the flames of people worrying about not being vaccinated. This is, in a sense, again, government malpractice. This is sort of criminal. I don't think you can convict the people who make the laws, but this is absurd. So they've arbitrarily, instantly, peremptorily, meretriciously decided that everyone who is doubly vaccinated is not fully vaccinated, and so they don't want to put them in the category of vaccinated and having died. But again, the numbers overall are very low, and why they're acting as strangely as this, I can't tell you. I think it's an absurdity. It's along the same lines as this slide here. This is from the WHO. This is June 2020, and a few months later, November 2020. I bring this up. They are asking, what's herd immunity? Well, the definition of herd immunity is you've got an immunity as a group And immunity mostly comes, vaccines are a relatively new thing. So herd immunity has historically always been that people have had enough of the illness that the illness can't get around anymore because people are immune to it. And so it can't go door to. If enough people knew that there's a FedEx, imposter going through the neighborhood, ringing the doorbell and then, mugging you or robbing you, we would have herd immunity by everyone telling everyone about this guy. We pass around the videos, description, and so forth. Everyone's seen this picture. He can't get into any of our houses because our herd, our community, has developed an immunity, a knowledge of this guy, an identification, and they won't let him in. So that you don't need a vaccine for that. That just happens normally, on a physiologic basis, because your body has seen it. We get a cold and then we don't have it anymore. Why? Because we got over it, because we have immunity to it. We don't get that same cold instantly a week later, and so forth. We don't need vaccines for colds. It's always been developed through previous infection. Lo and behold, the definition disappears as far as previous infection. If you look here, if you can read this, herd immunity is a concept used for vaccination. Um, Protected once a threshold of vaccination is reached. Herd immunity is achieved by protecting people from a virus, not by exposing them to it. This is factually wrong. Well, let's say this again. Herd immunity is achieved by protecting people from a virus, not by exposing them to it. That's idiotic. That's absurd. That's ludicrous. You are protected from any further common colds by having been exposed to it. If the illness is not severe, you should expose yourself to it and then get over it. We used to have chickenpox parties back in the 50s and 60s. We had rubella, German measles parties back at the same time before there were vaccines. And historically, those are fine in the young kids who don't get that sick from that thing. So that's exactly what they always did. And herd immunity is that. And most places on earth that don't, are not really on the vaccine axis as much, and they're maybe tropical countries, they don't have to do any of this. They will get herd immunity all by their lonesomes. I mean, they don't need this. This is kind of a complicated slide here, but it's the way I just want to put it up to show the way the CDC thinks. This is their worry. If the R factor, the transmissibility goes up, as Dr. Malone said, to 8, here it's 5. Basically, the vaccine will pass through a population more in totality. They're saying the higher the vaccine coverage, the slower the slower the rate of penetration. But as the R factor goes up, the penetration gets high regardless. So it's kind of a pointless affair in a way. If the R factor is as high as Dr. Malone says, to be vaccinated or not vaccinated is going to penetrate the entire population anyway. So they're saying here, with natural immunity at a higher rate, I don't know why that does that. And here it's a slightly lower rate. This is kind of complicated, high level stuff. I'm not going to bother too much with it. But the point is that even if your population is vaccinated, they will still probably encounter the virus. Again, getting back to the raincoat example, they're going to encounter it, but they're not going to get as severely damaged as they would have otherwise. And so if you're vaccinating the elderly, you're pretty much all done with this. This is done. So these are some of the points that I got from Dr. Malone's lecture. He was saying that he and Peter Navarro have said that the CDC doesn't have a strategy, it's seat of the pants. So I'm going to go over his points briefly. Worldwide vaccination. Basically, if we vaccinated everybody, we would train the virus to escape the vaccines. This is a similar concept with antibiotics. If you use antibiotics in all the farm animals, you develop immunity by the bacteria. They get resistant, and then you get antibody-resistant bacteria. Same concept. Bacteria can't think, viruses can't think. What we're doing is, in this case, evolving the virus. The vaccinated are driving the escape mechanism, which is a Darwinian thing. All our immune systems are being trained for a single antigen, so a single spike protein. And we're leaving out the fact that our own innate and adaptive immune systems can be trained without vaccine. So I'm not going to go over this too much more, except to say that we should be using the vaccine, to protect the elder who are vulnerable to death, the vaccine has to be let circulate in the regular population and support that with early drug treatment. That's his concept. My concept is additionally is that young people should do young people stuff, and they should get out and about and do their business because they're very low risk from this at all. Um, so this is a thing about vaccines. Um, the, uh, the part you have to worry about is hospitalization or death. Um, this does not appear to be changed with Alpha versus Delta. Delta is the red dots. England, Scotland, Canada, and Israel, they're all maintaining very high rates of protection against hospitalization and death. So the fact that you're seeing more confirmed cases and you know, despite having the vaccine about, again, is likely because our target has changed, because young people are out and about doing dating things, and they're just getting more cases. But it's, you know, again, it's a pointless exercise because it doesn't matter to them. I'm going to get to this slide, and this are similar. This is from the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Response System, and males probably more than women or girls are getting cases of myocarditis. This is from Israel, and the data is probably a little bit better there because here I think there's kind of we haven't been nearly as fully vaccinated, and there's also I think a little bit more pressure not to report vaccine problems through the VAERS system. At any rate, they are seeing myocarditis cases that exceed the risk and problems of hospitalization in the younger age groups. So under age 25, your side effect problem, which is again very, very small with the vaccine, is higher with vaccine than it is with virus. I think cases of myocarditis go down with age, it seems. And again, the risk from the disease itself is higher. So older people can make their own decision. But if you, I think you're making a completely valid decision if you're young and healthy, avoiding the vaccine. This first line here says VAERS is a suboptimal system. The CDC, this is from Dr. Vinay Prasad, that they are not considering alternative strategies. They're not accounting for COVID risk factors. But I guess his point is here that they're kind of doing one size fits all. They're not looking at the fact that different parts of your population have different needs, and they're not factoring in natural immunity. I have this slide just as a kind of a quick demonstration of how complicated natural immunity is. Again, you're seeing the totality of the virus. You're putting up a lot of different reactions with IgM, IgG, T cells. You have different antibody response. You have antibody diversity and affinity, and this is a far more in-depth affair than you get with just the spike protein, just vaccine. This slide kind of relates to the earlier slides about deaths. This is the United States background deaths per day of the week, about 6,500. So right now we're seeing maybe 100 or 200, 300 deaths a day from COVID, supposedly. Not, you know, so we don't even know if it's with or from COVID. There's always a background of death. Motor vehicle accidents are getting close in number to our COVID deaths, and nobody's really discussing stopping motor vehicles. There's going to be more suicides. There are going to be more assaults and homicides in this year than previous years. And these all have to be factored into some of the deleterious effects we've had from overdoing and over-treating Delta and anything else with these lockdowns and so forth. New Zealand re-locked down because of one case of COVID. Australia has been locked down, I think, for weeks for similar basis. What we're getting is a very sad society. I'm not sure when this was taken, probably last winter in New York City. This is no way to live. You know, young lady, she looks pretty sad. She's alone. This is, I think, a sadness. Is getting back to our earlier couple. You know, a lot of this is founded on kind of a push to vaccination. So again, this is borrowing from Dr. Malone. He brought up Plato's concept of the noble lie. And this is reference to 1984, no pun intended, and it's the polio vaccine. And there were some issues with the polio vaccine about that time. And in the Federal Register, they're talking about kind of any possible doubts whether or not well-founded about the safety of the vaccine cannot be allowed to exist in view of the need to assure that the vaccine will continue to be used to the maximum extent consistent with the nation's public health objectives as they determine. So a noble lie is something that you are knowingly putting out, by the elite to maintain what they consider social harmony to advance an agenda. So that's really the thing here. For everybody under 50, the best agenda right from the beginning, and we knew this from the Diamond Princess data from January 2020, the cruise ship, is that young people should be out and about. They're not going to have any problems with this. We've done really absurdly over this, and we've have rules on top of rules, and people are buying them. There's kind of the illusion of truth fallacy. If you look that term up, that the more you hear something, the more you think it's true. As context, there are always going to be certain risks out in the world. This is from a site about shark attacks. They want you to understand how rare shark attacks are. Well, it's about the same for COVID deaths for children, for instance. I think, I'm not sure the exact number of children. I think it's 40. It depends on what age you cut off. But there's, I think, under 20 years old or under 25, there's 70 million people in the country. The death rate for children under 15 or something has effectively been zero. So you're talking about shark attack rates. So that means, if you think your kid should wear a mask in school, you should probably never let them in the ocean. You should never let them near, in the woods where there might be snakes. There's risk. They shouldn't be on trains. They should not be outdoors. They should not be allowed to play soccer. They should not go skiing, ride a bicycle, and so forth. These are lifetime risks, mind you. But the thing pertains, if you do, you should avoid for your entire lifetime swimming, because the drowning rate is far higher than anything from COVID. As we were looking earlier, the fatality rate from COVID for the vaccinated is 1 in 150,000. So that's somewhere around train crash, dying from fireworks over the course of your lifetime, or lightning and so forth. So you really got to take a good look back. So this is Dr. Malone's summary. Delta is different from previous strains, highly contagious, likely more severe. I dispute this. I don't think it's more severe. The data show, that the case fatality rate is vastly down. I don't think it's so much contagious as that people are doing more contagious activities, as we, talked about partying and whatnot, making up for lost time. Breakthrough infections may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. So there's going to be more breakthrough, more community spread despite vaccination. Well, I don't buy this completely. I think that I take that back. This is not Dr. Malone's slide. This is the CDC's slide. I dispute this as well. This is not true. NPIs are not essential to prevent continued spread, because the people who are vaccinated are not going to really be shedding very much in the way of virus. And again, the virus will pass around everybody probably fully at some point. And again, nobody's really having any problems or issues from it. This is Dr. Malone's slide, and I'm going to leave it here. You can pause this and look at it separately. Offer vaccination to high-risk individuals. Stop censoring and blocking repurposed drug development. Emphasize treating patients as soon as they develop disease. That's treating them with medications. So he mentions medications here. So I'll let you look at these separately, but these are reasonable points, I think, all of them. And he recommends a change in the, kind of the public health posture. Trust, educate, and respect citizens' right to choose. Avoid authoritarian demands like New Zealand, Australia, other countries, France, and whatnot. Avoid information censorship and psychological manipulation through the noble lie, big media, and tech, and so forth. And it's it's important to steer clear of fear, coercion, questionable ethics. But this is something we should always be doing. And I think that you need to really look and understand the facts better so that you can argue all of these points. So this is just kind of a little meme. It doesn't have to be leftists. It can be kind of people who are overly confident in science. The world does not really need religion anymore. also, bowing down to the Faucis and so forth. Um, the I do think, that somebody said, I forget who it was, Chesterton, but perhaps that, man has a God-sized hole in his heart, and we're looking for things to follow. I think it's rare to have people being able to kind of follow on their own thoughts. I think every animal herds, getting back to herd immunity. Gazelles work in a herd. Um, Fish school. We school in a sense by learning from others. And the illusion of truth fallacy, we keep hearing something, people keep saying it, we follow and we believe it. I think most people are not going to look into in depth. So if you have that ability to do that, I think it's up to you to be something of a leader and help people follow you. Um, these are some notes I made the other day after a seminar. Why you can read them. Why certain countries are doing fairly well without vaccine. A lot of this is a disease of neurosis, and that can only be worsened as the disease of despair factored in. Um, I thought the vaccine would make everyone better because they'd stop worrying, but I think worrying breeds worrying, and we're getting a little bit of this kind of like religion of scienceism and safetyism. So we got to be careful. And the point that a doctor friend of mine made was, we should be really screening before any vaccine usage to make sure that we don't give it to people who've already had COVID, who are going to likely have more severe um, reactions. This is from March 2020. What a relief to know this is okay. I would have thought things would have gotten better from this, but we're not necessarily seeing that. Um, this is a slide you can just pause and look later and ask some of those questions. Um, you know, the question there is, why? Um, oh, I did it again, huh? I didn't have it part of the stream. Oh well, silly me. All right, so I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to have to probably delete this one and redo it. I apologize. Any rate, I think I went over slides without having the part of the stream. This is a bad habit of mine. I got to work on that and maybe redo the second half.